Welcome everyone to another Celebrate Health, Wealth, Spirit and Happiness event. Today I am talking to the wonderful and fabulous Jennifer Lowe. She is an accountant who has helped me personally really understand my finances and be able to work through quite a few things. I've asked her many questions over the years. And I know often when we think of accountants, we think of some sort of person, sort of man in a suit who's going to jibber jabber a lot of words at us we don't understand. And let me tell you, Jennifer is not one of those. She is fabulous, she is down to earth, and she will always give you your financial advice in a way that you can best understand it. So Jen, thank you very much for joining us.
Oh, no, thank you for having me.
Now, as you know, I've got a list of questions here, and the first one I always ask everyone is, what makes your heart sing?
Oh, wow. Well, I think, the first thing would be the obvious one. My children, most of the time, do make my heart sing. Definitely, I get a lot of joy out of them. Apart from that, I would have to say I get a lot of satisfaction from my work, particularly when I feel like it's a job well done. And I have to admit, particularly when I get someone come into the office that is very stressed about money or tax. Usually tax brings out the worst in a lot of people. And so they come in a real flap. And I always feel like I've really done a good job if they walk out, with a lot of that stress gone. And I do get a lot of satisfaction out of that. It just makes me feel like I've done my job well.
See, that I think that's where we share that we like the people who see us to be calm, clear, certain and confident with their money. That really can help us make sure that we're doing the right thing by them. And certainly, Jen, I know from my experience with you that you have always managed to achieve that for me. So I have no doubt that there's many, many more people who have had many, many more complex issues who have needed your guidance.
Oh,
I have
you.
to ask though, what made you decide to become an accountant?
It's one of those areas, I think when I went into it originally, I didn't think that I would work so much with people, which sounds terrible, really. I really liked the idea of working with numbers. I like the fact that in accounting, it didn't seem like there were a lot of grey areas. Basically, a debit has to equal a credit or you've done something wrong. It's as simple as that. And it's very easy to work out where you've gone wrong. And I always like the certainty about it. I just really like that. It really appealed to that aspect of my personality. But it's ironic because as I got further along and I realized I'm dealing in tax, which is a minefield, there are there are very few certainties. There's a few black and white rules, but the rest of the time it comes down to your interpretation of the legislation. And so that's a very grey area. And then, of course, you don't deal with numbers without dealing with people. So in the end, completely different to what I expected.
That was going to be one of my questions, that you work with money and people, which can be extremely, I guess, fireworkish. Which is trickier to work with, the money or the people?
I think it's one of those things. Definitely the numbers come easier for me. I think I just have a brain that sort of works better with numbers, but at the end of the day, you can't have one without the other. And I don't think I'd want it either. I don't think you can have, just dealing with numbers without that human aspect. And when I looked at what area of accounting I wanted to get into, I've ended up in public practice, and that by definition means you're dealing with the public. So a lot of the time, numbers is just sort of the very end of the process. It's not even the majority of it.
And you'd have a lot of people who come to you who are quite terrified with their financial situation, or they've received a letter from the ATO or something has happened. What do you tell people who are scared with their money to help sort of calm them down and get them in a clearer position?
Yeah, I think I always stress the fact that the ATO is not infallible. A lot of the time that they can get it wrong. So just because you've been sent something, a lot of it's computer system driven. It's not even someone at the other end of the ATO that's pressing a button to send that letter. It's the system that's sending a letter because it believes a certain, criteria has been met that warrants that letter. And a lot of the time it's just not warranted. And the language that's used in the letters is often confusing, it's not clear. And it is sort of, designed to induce panic. They want a response out of people. So they use language that they think is going to guarantee that response. And a lot of the time it does. So really the first thing I say to people is calm down. As sort of generic as that sounds, is that, it's really not as bad as they think it is. And sometimes I tend to think that I might get a little bit blasé about correspondence from the ATO, because I've really reached a point where I realise that most of the time, their catastrophe level is just automatically default set, at sort of a 10, whereas, most of the time, oh no, it's only a 2, that's not a 10. So that's probably the first thing I do, is just try and get them to ratchet it down.
Yep. I know a lot of people, I guess, who aren't in business may not have even really thought of hiring an accountant. But what should we look for when we're selecting an accountant?
I think, as much as you need someone that has a decent reputation, so I do think that asking around family and friends is important to make sure that you're getting someone that has a good track record. I think a lot of it comes down to communication. You need someone that can communicate with you, because at the end of the day, it doesn't matter if they're doing the best job in the world if they can't communicate to you what they've done, how they've done things a particular way, why it's been done, and how it has produced a really good outcome for you. If you don't have that, it's a bit useless. So I do think communication is really important. And then also I guess a level of integrity and reliability. You've got to have someone that's going to be prepared to get back to you if you've got a question, if you've got an issue, if you email. It's no good if you've got to chase someone for days on end. So I've always felt that's really important. You've got to keep communication, going back and forth. Even if you can't provide an answer there and then, I guess you've got to let the person know that you are considering the issue, and that, they are going to get a response from you, even if it takes a little bit longer than what they were hoping.
I mean, from my experience, I think having an accountant is very much like having a doctor. You need a good bedside manner. It's no good having someone who can just, go in and go, I'm going to do the surgery on you. You need someone who can help take you through the whole process and make you feel safe on that journey. And really, I think that's what a good accountant does, and that's why I've come to you for so many years.
Oh, thank you. But yeah, I agree, totally agree. You've got to have that, or else really, there's definitely better out there. If you're not getting that at the moment, there's much better out there.
And how can an accountant help us if we're not in business? So if we're not a business person and we don't need all those financial spreadsheet things and profit and loss statements, what does an accountant do for all of us who are just sort of going to work?
Yep. Well, I tend to think that, people that aren't in business are going to need accountants, maybe less and less as time goes on. I know that the government is heading towards, most individuals not having to do a tax return. If you sort of just earning a salary and wage, you have a few deductions, maybe a little bit of bank interest, the time will come where maybe you're not needing to see an accountant all the time for tax. But having said that, there's a lot of other situations that arise, whether it's to do with investments or, superannuation, particularly, that there's always going to be, areas in your life where a little bit of, expert financial advice definitely doesn't go astray. And the main thing is getting that advice before you sort of, consider going into a particular investment or down a particular path, because a lot of the times, any sort of issues that are going to be cropping up later, that they can be foreseen, because at the end of the day, we've seen a fair bit. And it just means that, everything is set up the way that it should be at the beginning, because it's a lot easier, for things to head that way than it is to sort of try and unravel a mess, when it's sort of a couple of years down the track.
When it's all in a tangle. And so I know a lot of ladies say to me, oh no, I don't worry about my superannuation. I know a lot of people sort of look at superannuation like their tax. It's kind of something that comes out and it's not really your problem. I think it's a little bit more important than that. So can you explain to us the importance of superannuation?
Yeah, look, superannuation is really important now, and it's going to become vital in the future. Unfortunately, the way that the country's heading with the demographic and the fact that that it's an aging population, we don't have as many children being born. It means that there's not going to be as many people working and providing income tax to support the pension system later on. So it means that the superannuation that we build up over time becomes what we have to sustain us once we sort of hit retirement. And with all of this sort of medical progress and everything, it just means that we're living longer, and we're living healthily longer. And it means that to either have an enjoyable lifestyle, or even a lifestyle that sustains us with all of the necessities, what we have in super is going to become vital, a vital part of that equation.
So superannuation is going to become very, very important, especially if Joe Hockey's right and we all live to 150. What should we look at when we're choosing our superannuation then? Because I know a lot of us just go, oh, okay, well, whatever my employer's got.
Yeah, I actually think that the most important thing, and I advise clients when they come to see me, is to look at any fund, and generally they have to publish in their product disclosure statement the returns that they've had over the last 5 and 10 years. And I think it's really important, a fund's return over the last 12 months is going to tell you a little bit, but everyone can have a great year. Any sort of fund manager can get lucky and hit the right mix of investments, that produces a great outcome in 1 year. But really the important thing is to look at it over a 5 to 10 year period, see what the returns has been, and then also compare the fees that they're charging, because those two things, if you can find a fund that has done fairly well on average, compared to other funds over a 5 and 10 year period, and their fees are also in an area that's either equivalent or on the lower end of the spectrum, I really think that your money is going to be fairly safe in those hands.
So we're really looking for what happens over the long term, because it's not like we're going to have our superannuation in there for, say, 2 years. We'll probably have it in there for 20, 40, maybe 60 years. And so we're looking at the long-term investment success.
Yeah, absolutely. Because, even when you look at, beyond a fund manager, because at the end of the day, a fund manager might be able to make a few good calls, but a lot of it comes down to what's happening in the stock market in general. The stock market, it's a volatile beast. You only have to look at the last 6 months to see what's happened there. But over time, even after the global financial crisis in 2007 and 8, the markets bounced back amazingly, by about 2013, 2014. So that's why it's really important to look at it over that 10-year period, say, for example, from 2006, pre-global financial crisis to now. And you'd see, like on average, even though there have been some good and bad years in that time, that the average rate of return is the most useful thing.
And so when we're looking at selecting an accountant, if it's not necessarily our tax return that we're looking for now, what should we ask our accountant if we're looking at working with them long term?
I would probably, during the tax interview process, I think you start to get a feel, you have that opportunity to ask other questions about super and other types of things. And I think it's always just to make sure that you're getting value for money, in that you're getting advice that is accurate, that is designed to educate you about, your money in general, and, that it is going to provide, sort of useful information later, and that really you're not being sold anything. I still, encounter a lot of people in the financial industry where really it's about, trying to sell other products to people. And I think at the end of the day, really, anyone can sell a product for commission, but I think you have to feel like that there's an education that you're gaining out of it.
That sounds really good. So Jen, what other services do you offer at Total Tax Solutions and Accounting?
Yeah, we mainly focus on tax, of course. That's our core sort of product. We also look at superannuation. We look at business advisory, particularly for businesses that are setting up and becoming more efficient. And then I also look at calculations and things that can be used in trying to access pensions and social security. So and even right into estate planning, that type of thing. So superannuation is something that's also become quite useful as a way of dealing with your estate in a tax effective way. So, and the thing is, the legislation changes all the time. So I guess we're sort of the gateway for keeping up with all those changes, processing, how that can sort of change the strategies that you need to have, and then communicating that information to you.
I think that's probably what I've learned most as a bookkeeper over the past few years, is how often things do change and how little we get told about it, really, as people on the outer. And so that how important the communications from you, because you send newsletters out to us and let us know, okay, well, this might be happening or this might be changing, and that's really helpful just to go, oh, okay, or I wasn't aware of that. How can people best get in contact with you, Jen?
Probably either the website. We do have quite a lot of information on the website, including all of our contact numbers and everything. But also, we offer an initial interview or consultation, sort of a half-hour sort of sit-down, complimentary. So we don't charge for that. And I think it's really important because you need to feel that it's going to be a good fit. It should be a relationship that's going to be long-term and ongoing. So I really think that half hour is useful for both parties to sort of work out if it's a good fit and whether it will work moving down the track. So that's probably the best I can suggest. If you've got the time, and we do sort of evening appointments as well as during the day, because I realise a lot of people work and can't get there from 9 to 5. Come in and see us, I think, and have that chat, and just make sure that you're confident that we can handle anything that's going to sort of arise.
And for my final question, it's one that I ask everyone. If there's one person alive or in spirit that you could have a great lunch with, who would you choose?
I know that there's a lot of people out there, really interesting, sort of famous people that I've admired over the years. But one person I think I would really like to sit down with is actually someone I never got the chance to meet in person. It's my grandmother. And now she must have died about 10 years before I was born, but she was actually an accountant, and she was an accountant at a time where it wasn't traditional for women to be accountants. So that was in the 1930s. So she was a bit of a trailblazer, and she was she was an accountant for a jewellery group in Sydney, Angus and Coote, and I can only imagine what it must have been like, going to work in that profession in what was completely a man's world. I have a lot of questions that I'd like to run past her, and I know that she particularly gained a lot of trajectory in her career, during World War II, when it became more acceptable for women to be working because a lot of the men were overseas, sort of fighting. So she's just one of those people that I've always regretted that I didn't have the chance to get to know. So I'd have to say it'd be her.
Oh, Jen, that would be awesome. And isn't it funny that when the world becomes really desperate, all of a sudden women are allowed to do things like, oh, okay, maybe you are okay with math, I don't know, we're going to give you a crack anyway.
Exactly. And I don't know that she ever would have reached as high as she did in her career if that hadn't happened. So, it's one of those sliding doors type of things. I think that a lot of women got the chance to shine, during that time, as tragic as the circumstances were.
Yeah. And that was our time where we went, okay, we actually can do a lot, and so we're going to keep heading in that direction. Thanks anyway. I think that's one of the most amazing things that came out of it. But your grandmother sounds amazing. I can't imagine being a female accountant in the 1930s, because even today we still have that image of a sort of a gentleman in his 50s in his suit lecturing us about fiscal maturity, almost like the banking scene from Mary Poppins. It's still something that gets very, very drilled, even when I think about it. And I've dealt with so many different financial people. I still have that image. So she would have been smack bang in the middle of it. I think that's amazing.
I know. And I think it's one of those things, once a genie comes out of the bottle, it's very hard to put the lid back on, and I think that's what they found.
That's awesome. Jen, thank you very much for your time. It's been awesome to find out so much. And I've always been a big fan of yours, because you've always helped me through. And I think the way that you demonstrate and deal and educate people with money is just sublime. If every accountant out there was like you, one, everyone would be going to an accountant, and two, everyone would feel so much safer and more confident in their own understanding. So thank you very much.
Oh, well, thank you. It's mutual. So thanks for having me on the program.
No worries, Jen. We'll see you soon.
Okay.
Bye.
Bye.